The Laura Ingraham Show.
Other absurdity that we've gotten ourselves into on the global scale, and have frequently pointed out to you how the globalists in the GOP agree with the globalists in the Democrat Party. That's why we had the Clush 2016, what difference does it make, meme going on our show as long as Jeb was in the race. I said, well, why doesn't Jeb just get on the same ticket as Hillary? They basically agree on key issues from trade to immigration, even some foreign policy issues. They're in broad agreement. And globalization for them has been a big friend of the United States, regardless of where it's taken middle America. And I warned you about what would happen if Trump got elected and brought, well, the foxes into the henhouse. And we're seeing perhaps some signs that that is already underway. Now, what am I talking about? There are a number of people who've been put into key positions of power, both inside the White House and outside the White House, who could have an outsized effect on U.S. domestic policy and U.S. foreign policy. And some of these people, their names you don't know, and there's no need to go over every name right now, but suffice it to say, whether we're talking about the Justice Department or the Treasury Department or the National Security Council or in economic policy in the West Wing, it is up to us to keep the Trump administration honest and close to you, the people who voted for him, the people who supported him. He won by flipping all of these blue states red. All of the Rust Belt went red. States that had been written off by Republicans in years past, or the fool's errand. They were fool's gold. Remember Pennsylvania was fool's gold? That was going to be the Waterloo for Trump. How many times did we hear that? Wisconsin, same deal. And what did I say? I told you, if Trump stayed on these issues that grounded him really strongly in the economic nationalist sentiment, where we focused on America first, we focused on getting business done in this country first, we made sure that we had secure borders, that we had a coherent foreign policy that didn't send us running willy-nilly all over the globe, where we redid these trade deals, where we defunded monstrosities of death like Planned Parenthood, where we repealed and replaced Obamacare in a meaningful way that truly instilled competitiveness back into the healthcare marketplace, all of those issues. Oh, thank you. Prescription drug bidding and everything that went along with that, breaking up the monopolies in healthcare. Well, the antitrust protections that some of the healthcare industry and the insurance industry seems to get, well, that can be busted up. Because right now we have monopolist power in healthcare. That has to end. So on all of these issues, I think regular folks said, wow, this is a new way of doing business. He's going to actually do what the people want done. He's going to actually be a politician different from the rest, because the swamp, when you drain the swamp, you don't give power to the swamp monster. You vanquish the swamp monster. And from what I'm hearing, what I understand is happening inside the White House, the very people who gave Donald Trump the right and best advice, Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller and others in that, intellectual framework, that they're having to do battle with people who were either loyal to Hillary Clinton or loyal to George Bush. Now, I'm not saying that those people couldn't have some role or couldn't be useful in some way in the administration. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, voices, yes. Advisory position, perhaps. But how many of you want Goldman Sachs having effect on all of domestic policy in the United States? Interesting pieces. We have to get to this. Interesting pieces. Inside Trump's White House, New York moderates, that means a liberal. If that's the Washington Post, they call a moderate a liberal. I'm going to just change it. New York liberals spark infighting and suspicion. Inside the White House, they are dismissed by their rivals as the Democrats. Outspoken, worldly, and polished. I already don't like them. When I hear that, it's like I don't like them. Outspoken, worldly, and polished. This coterie of ascendant Manhattan business figures turned presidential advisors is scrambling the still evolving power centers swirling around President Trump. Led by Gary Cohn and Dina Powell. Dina Powell, George W. Bush administration. Gary Cohn, liberal New Yorker who's donated both to Democrats and Republicans, but gave $275,000 to Democrats over the years. But because he's Goldman Sachs, he sprinkled the money around to the Republicans as well, $250,000. He is a Democrat. He donated to Marco Rubio, but not to Donald Trump. But he's really rich, so I guess that. On the Republican side are the populists driving much of Trump's nationalist agenda and confrontations, led by Bannon, who has grown closer to Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, in part to counter the New Yorkers. Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So Bannon and Priebus are now as thick as thieves because it's the Republicans versus the Democrats in the White House. What did I tell you at the beginning of all this? I told you, watch the Bushes. We have people shepherding around Neil Gorsuch, which I've learned about over the weekend in this New York Times investigation about how they're running the Gorsuch nomination. And I will reveal more of this in my upcoming book, because this is stuff I don't want to spoil all this. These are people who sat across from me at a dinner table and said the most hateful, horrible things about Donald Trump, who urged certain people never to endorse him, who are now shepherding judicial nominations for the Trump administration. I'm not talking about Leonard Leo, by the way. I'm not talking about him. Now think about that. Why do you want these people within a football field of your judicial selection process? Why would you allow these people in the process? In the fold? Not at all. And don't say, "Oh, we want a team of rivals. We want to bring in all voices." You want closest to you the people who saw the light politically, not the people who are going to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic and go back to the old way. You know who's smiling? Jeb Bush is smiling. Low energy now has some power. That's a good line. Low energy now has some power. Send that over to Conradi. Jeb, I'm surprised Jeb's not running. I just hit my microphone off. Sorry. I'm so excited. I'm hitting the table here. I'm like Khrushchev hitting the table. Better not make any Russia statements. They're going to say that I'm part of the whole cabal. We got the Gorsuch hearings going on this week. We got Comey testifying on Capitol Hill. How comfortable are you with a Goldman Sachs Democrat having outsized influence on domestic policy in the White House? On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you about this? On a scale of 1 to 10, 855-40 Laura. Trump went on and on about Goldman Sachs in this campaign. Goldman Sachs this, Goldman Sachs that. He went after Ted Cruz on Goldman Sachs. He even went after the CEO of Goldman Sachs. During last year's campaign, Trump portrayed both Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton as pawns of Goldman Sachs. And he broadened his critique after Steve Bannon came on board. This is from the New Yorker in early February, the New Yorker article. Goldman CEO and Cohn's old boss, Lloyd Blankfein, was depicted as a member of a cabal of global financiers who had, quote, robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities, close quotes. Definitely invite him into the White House. 855-40 Laura. This is going to get ugly. Y'all thought it wasn't going to hold people accountable? Trump got into power? You don't know me very well. We'll take a break. The great Chuck Berry passed away over the weekend at age 90. Considered by many the real founder of rock and roll. Elvis, phenomenal. Chuck Berry on the guitar, nobody touched him. Everyone copied him, from the Beatles to the Rolling Stones, and the tributes that came pouring in over the weekend from people who actually know music gave him the proper credit. The only two left of his generation, well, maybe three left. Willie Nelson, well, he's country, obviously, but had a huge effect on music. Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard. Those are the only, Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard, both, of course, piano players, but the guitar was Chuck Berry's. You're listening to The Laura Ingraham Show. The populists did. Those who believe you take care of business at home, that the trade policy of the United States should be focused on improving the home front, that these deals have to be negotiated in a different way and a smarter way and litigated if necessary. Now, we're waiting for the confirmation vote brought to the floor of Bob Lighthizer, who's going to be the U.S. trade representative. Gary Cohn tries to push around Bob Lighthizer. I don't think that's going to go well for Gary Cohn. I'm sorry. Bob Lighthizer knows more about trade than any living human being, in my estimation. He was Reagan's deputy USTR at a very young age. He's been litigating trade deals for, 35 years in the law. He knows how the WTO works. He knows how these international tribunals work, and he knows what needs to happen in order to put America first. Donald Trump better remember who brought him to victory. People like you. It's not the Goldman Sachs crowd. We're going to hear from the FBI director at the House Intel Committee. That's going to happen shortly. The kids on Morning Joe were all a Twitter about the factions in the White House, which some say, I think when Kellyanne came on the show recently, she said it's all intrigue, palace intrigue. I take issue with that. It's not palace intrigue. This is the battle for the heart and soul of this administration. And if they go back to Bush, he'll be a one-term president. If he sticks to what won for him, he could absolutely reform this government. He could just turn this entire debate on its head and grow his coalition of supporters, not shrink it.
There's no question that there are imbalances in the global economy. The United States buys way more than it sells abroad. And Trump is saying that needs to change. We need something closer to balance. And I don't think any serious economist would disagree with that. The question is how you do it without blowing up the system that, in the end, is our fantastic global capitalist economy.
Fantastic for whom, David? For whom is it fantastic? Oh, that's right. You can buy a lot of cheap junk at Target. Fine. Okay, then beyond that, how is it good for the old Rust Belt? How is it good for New England, which has seen its old factories hollowed out? When you see what's happened in places like Vermont and Connecticut and Rhode Island, and this is just a travesty. Upstate New York, Syracuse, Rochester. You see what's happened to these great manufacturing hubs of America, and Trump's sad portrait of them at the inaugural was kind of right. I mean, this is a rusted out carnage of what globalization has done to the country. And doesn't mean we didn't get any benefits. Of course, you got some benefits, but does that outweigh the negatives that this thirst for cheap foreign goods, hunger for cheap foreign goods, where that got us? Coming up on the Laura Ingraham Show, although I have no guest sheet, Drew. I don't know where that is. I have an empty guest sheet. Drew's not looking at me. Empty. Pat Buchanan's going to join us. We're also going to talk to Craig Shirley coming up, and a lot more. 855-40-LAURA. Also, by the way, we have a immigration sob story that is going to curl your hair. We have an MS-13 update in Northern Virginia, as I've been telling you about this for 8 or 9 years now, how MS-13 has infiltrated Northern Virginia and the retaliatory killings that are going on during these power struggles inside that global criminal illegal immigrant gang brought to the Commonwealth of Virginia. It is a shock. And a lot of you had your brackets busted over the weekend. Oh, all you poor Duke fans lost. Oh, how sad. That was so sad. What were the other big upsets? Michigan beat Louisville, right?
Yep.
I watched that game.
And Villanova, the number 1 overall seed, also getting eliminated from the tournament as well.
Yeah,
so
I only watched the Louisville game. That was exciting. That who's that big tall? And of course, you don't see many of the big tall white players.
Laura, I was just going to say your Virginia lost, though. Unfortunately, to Florida, the SEC.
I would have shaken her hand. I mean, I don't know why we don't shake her hand. It's like, Mr. President, shake her hand. Do. He's just ignoring them. What was going on with that? I thought that was strange. I've never quite seen anything like that. That was really odd. She looked like she could scale the fence at the White House at that press briefing when he made the comment about, well, at least we both have that in common, being surveilled or wiretapped by Obama. So there was a lot going on there. He also talked about the need for Germany to pay its fair share of NATO, which Germany took strong issue with once she got back home. But do you notice she didn't hop the plane to Mar-a-Lago? It was only the Freedom Caucus members and Ted Cruz, but she didn't get to hit the beach with Donald Trump down in Mar-a-Lago. That would have been no burkini jokes. You guys are horrible people. And Angela Merkel in a what? Burkini? Forget it. That's crazy. Pat Buchanan's got to save me from this crew I work with. Pat, how are you? Syndicated columnist. I mean, you could picture Angela Merkel in a burkini, right? Pat. I mean, that would be quite a sight.
It would be quite a sight on the beach. That's right.
So we got so much to talk about.
Down there in Palm Beach.
Oh my goodness, we have so much to talk about. We'll talk about the Merkel meeting, what's in store this week. But I have to ask you first, Pat, about the stories coming out of the White House, and my sources telling me that the Bush moderates and Democrats like Gary Cohn, then Dina Powell, who's a Bush loyalist, another Goldman Sachs person, that each of them is seeing their influence rising against the populists, which I think are fairly small in number. So you almost, it's like the Democrats versus the Republicans, or the Democrats versus the conservatives in there.
Well, you know, these White Houses have battles, ideological and political battles inside over issues because both parties are divided. But what astonished me was how much of it was there in the press, and what did they have, 17 people they had interviewed, they said, for that story. But it doesn't surprise me at all, and it looked like it's the Goldman Sachs folks in White House versus the Bannon-Miller opposition. But I was surprised at how candid it was, how open it was, and people commenting on each other and who's up, who's down, and Reince Priebus is now moving toward the Bannon camp.
the enemy of my enemy.
World War I or something.
Oh, yeah. Pat, it's the enemy of my enemy is suddenly my friend. So it's like, wait a second.
I think the political folks would want definitely. My view has always been that, while Ryan and those folks disagree with Trump on the populist agenda, they have a conservative agenda also on which both sides agree. So I think that would eventually move Reince, who I think is basically sort of a Capitol Hill Republican, basically into the camp, working together with the populists. You're going to need both agendas to win this thing.
Well, here's what I'm concerned about. And I promised, and Bannon asked us at that CPAC thing he did, that keep us in check. Make sure to keep us honest. And I took him at his word when he said that. So my concern here, Pat, is the issues that flipped all of those old Rust Belt states and all those blue states red were the issues that you have been talking about for decades. I've been talking about for at least 15 years, which is trade, immigration, economic nationalism, and a more judicious and pragmatic foreign policy. And yet I see in key positions at the Treasury Department and some even in the Justice Department, we have Bush loyalists in these positions. And
I agree with you to this extent. You look at the makeup and the composition of the cabinet and the rest of it, I don't deny these are able folks. But if the agenda is going to be implemented, it's going to rely more and more heavily on Donald Trump himself, who presumably understands what got him here and believes these things. I mean, take the trade issue. I mean, it's quite simple. You're going to need some kind of border adjustment tax or tariff of 10-20% when goods coming in. You cut taxes on American corporations that are here in the United States. I mean, this is the way to restore the balance, get rid of the trade deficits. The president knows this. I think the other folks know this, and you got to rely on him to do it. But I will say, look, if he decides to go with the old Goldman Sachs route, the globalists, then the game is over. And then all the effort is in vain. But I'm basically betting on Donald Trump himself.
Yeah, it's up to him. I mean, you can't be enamored of someone just because they made $250 million when they sold their Goldman stock, especially after he spent so much of the campaign and the primary season blasting the sweetheart deals that Goldman got and the influence that the corporatists had on U.S. policy over the years. I mean, that's going to not work for him.
Go back to NAFTA in 1994. That was fundamentally not only a trade deal with Mexico, which Mexico then devalued, it was a bailout of Goldman Sachs, which was up to its ears in Mexican debt. And so all these folks, I mean, they are interested in the globe. They are the Davos people. And they're much more familiar with Davos than they are Des Moines or Dubuque. And these are the folks that really cost the Republican Party and cost the country and denuded it of its manufacturing. But I think Trump, and he has people in there who are not only the political types, but the other types, economic types, who are economic nationalists. And that battle is underway. But I will say, if Trump abandons that, things are going to continue the way they are, and you're not going to restore American manufacturing.
Right, and I think, again, that's the end of Trump. I mean, that's the end of economic nationalism, populism, all of it.
Well, see, that would be fatal, I think, for the Trump presidency, but these issues are going to come back again and again because they came up from the people. They came up from what's happening in the country. And I don't think the American people or the folks who voted for him are going to go away. I mean, just like in Europe, I mean, you see the right-wing groups are falling short, but the centrist parties are all moving to the right because the issues are driving and pulling them that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks said, well, Geert Wilders didn't win in the Netherlands, so the populist movement is over. But these things take a long time to really show effect, as Reagan understood in 1964, how long it took.
Reagan, exactly. The country wasn't ready for, Ronald let the bloodbath begin Reagan in 1966. But by the time you got to 1980, the whole country, after Nixon's 49 state landslide, the whole country had moved further and further toward the right, and the McGovernites and the others who had taken over the Democratic Party were basically out of it. Carter recognized that by trying to move to the right, and that's how he won the election. He carried 10 out of 11 southern states. But take a look at the government in Holland. That government's been moved to the right on immigration. The prime minister was talking tough on it. A number of the other parties there have been taking up the issues. Even the French centrist party was taking up this issue. Fillon was, before he got in all the trouble. So these things are taking more and more time, but there's no doubt which way the trend is going.
On foreign policy in the administration, ABC's foreign correspondent Terry Moran had this comment. This was after the Merkel visit to the United States. Let's listen.
It's like Yik Yak, that high school, social media app where people say, well, I heard somebody said something about him, about her, and they're lost in the weeds of this adolescence out of Washington, so that the primary feeling is not, we don't like the president's agenda, he's president of the American people. We can't deal with this guy.
Having lived through a White House where people said George W. Bush makes the world doesn't respect the United States under George W. Bush, and the Republicans said it under Obama. People of the opposite party always say that.
So the commentariat set and the reportorial class want to continue to portray Donald Trump as not just a disruptor, but a buffoon, and that all the smart set in Europe is laughing and ridiculing him. And I guess by extension, that makes us all, a bunch of dupes. And that's what you're hearing consistently from the press.
Well, you are hearing that. But I will say, look, I was astonished at the almost the exact number of the German contribution to defense. I think it's 1.3% or something like that of GDP, which is preposterous. That's the largest, most powerful country in Europe. I mean, its traditions are not wholly Pacific. And it really ought to be doing a lot more. And I think the American people, you take a look at the budget cuts and things like that, they are going to ask more and more, what are these folks doing to contribute to the common defense, and why are we fighting all their wars, and why are all our guys up on the DMZ in South Korea? And questions like that, and, why are we in the Balkans, and John McCain wants to...
Oh, God, that's the one I want to ask you about.
Right? Yeah, we're all Montenegrins now, huh?
Pat, when he went after Rand Paul last week and said Rand Paul is basically colluding with the Russians because Rand Paul doesn't think we should go into Montenegro or expand NATO or Lithuania, whatever the topic is. I mean, John McCain is just not happy unless we're deploying like 50,000 troops somewhere.
I know. I mean, he wants to bring Montenegro, which has got it's got a real political problems. The prime minister quit. He said they were trying to assassinate him. It's 600,000 people, the population of D.C., And he wants to, I mean, how does it strengthen the United States of America and make us more defensible by bringing them in and declaring we're going to go to war to defend Montenegro? What, Rand Paul said, hey, let's take a look at all these war guarantees we're handing out. And when I saw McCain say that, that he's working for Vladimir Putin, I said, that solves one problem, what I'm going to write on tomorrow.
This is the debate that has been playing out, Pat, for decades and decades and decades. We keep having the same argument, and now we're increasing the defense budget by $54 billion. $4
billion, and how much are the Germans increasing it? I heard they're going to increase theirs by $3 billion.
3 strudels.
This is, again, when you run into more and more trouble, people, and they are, you take a look at that budget, there's some blood on the floor there, and people are going to say, why are we cutting all these programs when we're defending, the Koreans and the Japanese and the Germans and the Estonians and all the rest of them, and we're going into ever new wars in the Middle East with all the troop deployments increasing over there. Something's got to give, and I think it's going to be the American empire.
No, I got to stand up for Korea. I think Korea is the one place where we absolutely need our troops, and we need to remember that the Korean War was we won the peace in the Korean War. We won it. But this everyone I'm talking to in the administration, North Korea is a real problem for us.
They're bad actors, but I will say, if they need 150,000 more troops up on the border, shouldn't they be Korean troops? Korea's got an economy 40 times as large as North Korea, twice the population. It's got access to the superior weapons of the United States, F-15s, F-16s, U.S. tanks, far superior to anything there. And my view has always been, the United States allied with them, you can use American air and naval power offshore rather than have Americans the first to die in the Second Korean War, because I'll tell you, I don't believe a war is going to break out. I hope not. But I can't believe the American people would support the sending of more American troops to fight that war on the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, well, China would be happy if we pulled out of the region. And they're building 3 more islands, I guess, in the South China Sea. And apparently we can't do anything about it.
Well, the reason they're building that is because they had $4 trillion in reserves thanks to the MFN for China and all those China trade deals. Mm-hmm. They piled up enormous
huge wealth
surpluses every year.
Huge.
And now they're very wealthy, and they've got all this extra money. Mm-hmm. And so they're doing what countries do that build up like that, is expanding.
Hey, Pat, before we let you go on the health care bill, the vote is coming up on Thursday. Everyone I trust on this tells me that, and my own analysis, that this is not the best deal for conservatives and competitiveness in the healthcare marketplace. But they need a win, and now it's just like, we've got to win this. Could this come back to bite the Trump administration in 2020 if we start seeing healthcare premiums and increase and choices actually decrease, because that phase 3 is mythical, as Tom Cotton said?
Well, big time. Even if it gets through the House, I wonder if it's going to get through the Senate. Again, we can go back to Rand Paul. But look, if a lot of people have come to depend on health insurance and it is suddenly taken away from them, and others are seeing problems attended to the new bill as there were to the old, you could have a real problem before 2020.
Oh, my God. Well, God bless. Pat Buchanan, you should know this, that they recovered Tom Brady's jersey, both 2 jerseys from Super Bowl 51.
And stole them, huh?
Yeah, and it looks like the Mexicans took them. So we're still getting ripped off by the Mexicans. So it looks like a Mexican journalist.
Across the border. They took it across the border.
Yeah, so the Mexican journalist took the jerseys. Unbelievable. Pat, thank you so much. Great to talk to you, as always, on the Laura Ingraham Show. Devastating Northern Virginia, Los Angeles, Chicago, even in Detroit, even making its way up to Hartford, Connecticut, and Boston, Massachusetts. This wasn't covered very much in the campaign, frankly. I mean, even Donald Trump talking about illegal immigrant crime, the specifics of what this particular criminal enterprise does to its victims, it, as you could hear in that news report, it shocks even the police.
17-year-old Venus Arajeda, an acquaintance of Rayaz, also disappeared, then turned up safe. A third teen, Lizzie Calidris, also returned home after disappearing with her 5-month-old.
We are seeing a lot of increase in recruiting in the high schools and middle schools, which is alarming to us.
These are teenagers who, some of them get mixed up in the MS-13, try to leave, then they can't. Beheadings, torture. It's unbelievable. And we've allowed this to happen to ourselves. Behind the rise in seemingly chaotic MS-13 violence is a structured hierarchy of terror. By the way, I want you to, speaking of this immigration fiasco, go to immigrationpause.org. Immigrationpause.org. Go there right now. Support what Donald Trump is trying to do to put a pause on these insane levels of immigration, and we have to keep America safe. Above and beyond, we have to, beyond everything else, we have to keep Americans safe. So immigrationpause.org, and then ask for 10 friends to do the same. I'll tweet it out as well if you can't remember it.
After the murder of her daughter, Damaris Raya's mom has this message.
In their schools, check their friends because están dentro. They're inside.
Yeah, of course they can't speak English either. You're listening to your healthy radio addiction, 855-40-LAURA. Organized in local MS-13 units called cliques, the Maryland gangs put prospective members under long periods of observations before allowing them in. Ascension in the gang involves at least 5 rank designations, according to federal court records, with clique leaders using social media and coded words to stay in constant contact with their superiors in El Salvador and in the United States. It's not the military, but the local cliques are structured in the sense they have an understanding of whose permission is needed to carry out certain actions of the gang, said Rod Rosenstein, who is in line to be Jeff Sessions' deputy at the Justice Department. So he'll be the Deputy Attorney General. The hierarchy enforces allegiance among members and violence toward rivals. Money-making ventures like extortion and drug dealing. The dues collected from Montgomery County MS-13 members at their weekly meetings can be as little as $10, and you can be part of the enterprise. The killing of Dennis Montfar Bautista, whose body was found floating in a creek under the Beltway, was vicious. He died of stab wounds, blows to the head, heavy rocks, and drowning. Federal court papers say that in the weeks before the killing, gang members concluded that Bautista, also an associate of MS-13, had run afoul of gang rules. They then held disciplinary meetings in their own makeshift court and sentenced him to a beating, according to the records. And local gang members sought permission to carry out an actual slaying. This is what we're bringing into our country, my friends. This is what we're allowing into our country. And remember how they just savaged Donald Trump when he made his initial statement about how they're bringing in drugs, they're bringing in gangs, they're bringing in... Well, who was more accurate? The politicians who refuse to see the writing on the wall here for all of us on issues such as MS-13, or Donald Trump? Who is closer to the truth here when it comes to talking about crime across the border, coming across the border? I'm glad they're taking bids on the wall. Apparently they have, by all accounts, they have more than 100 bids now to build the wall, and he got to get going on that wall. Individuals who had advanced to the final level before being jumped in were called Checos or Czechs, federal prosecutors wrote. Checos underwent a probationary period which they were required to commit crimes on behalf of MS-13 to achieve trust and prove their loyalty to the gang. Federal prosecutors allege that Correas Mejia, at the time of this 2015 killing they documented, was on the verge of becoming an MS-13 homeboy, meaning he had killed. Stabbings, 40 stabbing wounds on one of the victims before being beheaded. And this is what we brought into America. 855-40-LAURA. We have the Comey hearings going on. We have the Neil Gorsuch hearings going to be underway this week as well. We have a lot of news. We're going to talk to Jay Palmer, who is an H-1B visa whistleblower in the Infosys visa fraud case. He's an immigration consultant. He was profiled on 60 Minutes last night. it was a really compelling segment on what's happened to American workers who've been forced to train their foreign counterparts. A friend of mine who went to high school with me texted me a couple of weeks ago, and she does a lot of work in the healthcare software monitoring business. So she helped set up large software alliances among healthcare firms, and they do billing software for various healthcare enterprises. And she sent me a text and she said, Laura, we need 0 H-1B visas. We don't need any in the United States. This is a total crock. And she said that when on some jobs she was replaced by foreign workers, because she's been replaced. She's a consultant, so she works contract work for various firms. She said 9 out of 10 times she's hired back by the firm to go in and fix the work that the foreign software engineers and foreign software experts screwed up. So she has to go back in and fix it. You know what it reminds me of is the construction workers in Colorado who called us. We have an immigration sob story, by the way, about that issue, which we're going to get to. I tweeted it out last night, and we also have that we're going to get to. But she said, so I have to fix all their mistakes, and then the same thing happens with construction work. And in construction work, where you have all these foreigners doing the construction work, a lot of times they can't understand English, can't understand English directions on stuff that they have to do with installs. And those things have to then be fixed by actual craftsmen, builders, and appliance folks who come in and actually can speak the English language and do the work, who are not illegally in the United States. So we'll get to that immigration sob story. There's one I tweeted out last night where a construction is about construction workers. And yeah, it was in the Guardian, actually, that it's been in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, the construction industry has had to rely on foreign workers in the past couple of decades. They've had to rely on foreign workers, and now Trump is scaring people off the work sites in some cases. They're not showing up certain days when they think there'll be an immigration enforcement. The Guardian, which you would think the liberal Guardian newspaper from Britain, that they would actually take up against the unscrupulous employers who hire illegal immigrants. But no, they're actually standing up for the continued illegality of the workplace. So I'll get to that piece as well. 855-40-LAURA. But we got to get to Jay Palmer. He's coming up. Do you know people who've been replaced by foreign workers? We want to hear your stories. And Jay will tell us what happened in Infosys and how visa fraud continues even now during the Trump administration and what he can do to stop it. Don't go away. He's an H-1B visa whistleblower, and the 60 Minutes profile last night was heartbreaking, infuriating, all the rest. I'm really glad they did the report. It was kind of surprising to see it, frankly. Jay Palmer joins us now. He was involved in, of course, working for Infosys, and he's with us now. Jay, how are you? Good to talk to you.
I'm great, Laura. It's such an honor to be on with you again. And, you know, this 60 Minutes just is bringing to the forefront of everything that's been going on. And some of these people that I've met over the last few years that was on this panel, and just to hear their stories and meet them face to face is, you know, truly heartbreaking. You know, you have IT workers going from, you know, supporting hospitals and to even our government to waiting tables and losing their houses and going to apartments. And it's just, you know, we did this to ourselves, and it's just the abuse is rampant in every state, in every city. Even in our home state of Alabama, it's rampant right now.
So tell me, to explain what the H-1B visa is and what it was designed to do.
Yes, it was designed to bring in the best and brightest and to create jobs. For example, you would bring someone in that could patent some type of technology, or even in the medical field, and it would create jobs. You know, it would create jobs in our country, but what it's being used for is to replace jobs because of the prevailing wage. The prevailing wage has not been adjusted for inflation since 1998. And a great story is, I mean, the story is if you're working at a company for 20, 25 years, and you know, you built your way up to, you know, $130,000, $140,000 a year, they can pay somebody $40,000 a year or $50,000 a year, and they'll replace you. And they don't even know your job. Most of these H-1B workers, Laura, are 22 and 24 years old. And what's even more appalling is I'm going to be breaking some evidence in the next 4 to 6 weeks that shows how many of the fake resumes that these people are actually using. If it wasn't for A.G. Sessions now and, what he's even brought this to the forefront, we've really got to put a stop to this. Our children and our children's children will have no chance to ever get a good, meaningful job, especially in the technology world, as long as this goes on.
And if we keep replacing our high-tech workers, software people, others in bottling companies, we've heard those stories as well. How do we ever think we're going to have innovation? Like, we need Americans to innovate. And if we don't, we hollow out our manufacturing, we allow all this to happen, then the people who do have jobs, we replace them, then where's the next level of American innovation going to come from?
They're not going anywhere. We will not have it. It's, our culture right now, our innovative culture is depressed because they have no hope. They cannot go out and get a job. We're falling behind on our mathematics, but, the real story, Laura, is we have, even in the interview, the Indian gentleman said, we're not as smart as the Americans. And that's so true. And it's all about corporate greed. It's all about money. And it's all about not investing in us.
Well, it's not about America first, that's for sure. I just was telling the story before you came on about a very good friend of mine from high school who does healthcare software management. And she has said to me innumerable times that there is no need for H-1B foreign workers in the United States in her field that she's seen, because she has to go back and fix all of their mistakes. She said invariably they make mistake after mistake. They don't understand the directions. They're cheap, and the contract American workers are fired, but then the contract workers often have to come back and fix their problems.
That's exactly right. And the quality of work is really skeptical at this point in time. And what's even scarier is we're outsourcing a lot of our data, and it's housed in the cloud in India, or it's housed in the cloud in China. I mean, do you really want our records, our healthcare records over there? I mean, one of the most interesting things is one of the people on the panel, she was telling us she worked for a hospital, and she was telling us all the data breaches that are not publicized. And, I partnered here with 2 attorneys in Montgomery, Bill Fuller and Guy Holton, and we're going to go after these companies. We're going after these people, and the information that I have right now that I'm passing on to our senators and our AG's office is validated. It's
rampant fraud in their qualifications, in their educational background, et cetera, but they get the paycheck. Let's go to Rick in South Carolina, line 3. We've been talking about the construction industry being hollowed out, other things. You're a licensed builder. You started 25 years ago, Rick. What else?
Yes, just real briefly, thanks again for taking my call. It's a first-time caller on your show.
God bless you.
All that aside, when I started, a knowledgeable carpenter, a lead carpenter, could get $12 an hour that could read blueprints, and again, we're talking 25 years ago, but could read blueprints and build a house from ground up and run a crew. And 25 years later, one of the reasons why there's not as many people willing to take the plunge as I have to continue pushing forward is there's not a lot of incentive financially, or even, I was excited when I got my builder's license. That excitement has been a push for me to keep up there, and if it wasn't for my passion, I'd be out of this business. So real simply put, in my opinion, even though the E-Verify system and many different checks and balances to make sure that we have legals working for us and everything like that, I try really hard, but I'm forced to sometimes, to use undocumented workers.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. We appreciate your input there. But the businesses that hire illegal labor should be prosecuted. Jay Palmer, thank you for your input on this. We loved the segment on 60 Minutes last night, and we look forward to having you back with the new evidence on the fraud on the resumes and the qualifications of H-1B workers. Great job. We'll take your calls on this, 855-40-LAURA. If you've been replaced in a tech job, we want to hear from you. Craig Shirley's also going to stop by his new book, Reagan Rising. And he had nothing prepared to say, and he just gave an incredible speech about our duties as Americans and what was at stake in that election, bringing unity to the party that badly needed it. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by Reagan Rising author, The Decisive Years, 1976 to 1980, Craig Shirley. It's a phenomenal book. Oh, my gosh. This is. I always think Craig can't outdo himself from book to book, but he's done it again. Don't know how he does it, but he's going to join us in just a moment. This is our featured book all week long on Facebook and on lauraingraham.com to understand the struggles that are going on now inside the White House, the intra-party tensions in the GOP, the struggle for conservative ideas. You have to understand how Reagan was able to take a losing coalition and turn it into a winning coalition in 1980. Lots of lessons for all of us in this book. Jay in Phoenix, though, I have to go to you first. Jay, you're going to tell us briefly your story in the technology field in Arizona being replaced by foreign workers. Tell us.
Thank you. I work on the north side of the valley at a financial institution, or used to, was relieved 2 other times by contract workers. They bring them in from foreign countries. You have to take screenshots of them when you interview them because the ones you're interviewing aren't the ones showing up. They stack up in apartments 6 to 8 deep, and then they have tutors at night where they pay the tutors out of their wages that go back to the company to learn how to do the jobs. They don't know how to do them, and I've been replaced several times. And the last time was right after I came back after having a baby.
What does John McCain and Jeff Flake say about this? Have you contacted their offices?
No comment.
Yeah.
They don't respond. They don't reply. They don't get back to you. They don't care. All they have to do is show up to the cafeteria at the building. They know which one it is. It's the north end of the valley. And there's a finance institution there that's a big one. It's a bank, too big to fail. And they're bringing them in on 60 cents on the dollar. Where
it's unbelievable. It is. Trump's got to put this has got to be put out of its misery, our misery. Those technology leaders, they want a lot of foreign workers in. The Facebooks, the Googles, the tech titans. Oh, they're going to be beating down the door asking Ivanka and Jared to bring all these foreign workers in. You know that's happening. They want. Oh, it's merit-based immigration. Oh, okay. Joining us now, Craig Shirley, the author of Reagan Rising, The Decisive Years, 1976 to 1980. A lot of folks who weren't alive during this time period think that Reagan just kind of popped out of thin air in 1980 and took the nation and the world by storm. But this was a long struggle to get his conservative ideas to the fore. And this book takes us through the convention in 1976, the Carter malaise, the struggle against George H.W. Bush for the primary win, the nomination win, and right up to 1980. And it's a phenomenal book. John Meacham actually wrote the foreword to the book as well. Craig, congratulations on another masterpiece. So excited about this book.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. It's a labor of love. I do enjoy writing American history, and of course, you and I both worked for him. And there's something there's always something new to learn about Ronald Reagan. It remains an endlessly fascinating character of history.
Let's go back to 1976, and
yes.
I want to play for you, and my guys will tell me when they have the audio. There was a great moment at the convention in Kansas City where we heard the speech he gave, the impromptu speech. But before that, when he walked, I think it was before that, correct me if I'm wrong, he walks into the arena. I guess it was right before he spoke. He walks into the arena, and the crowd goes crazy. Well, the comment that was made during this that long clip, Craig, was Ford might have the votes, but Reagan has the enthusiasm of the crowd.
Yes.
You could hear it in it was John. Believe that was John Chancellor speaking. That the enthusiasm and the emotion of the night and of the convention was with Reagan. Take us back to that night.
It is the last time really a convention was a convention. That's when conventions were fun. They were
God, that looked like a
unpredictable.
blast.
They were spontaneous.
Yeah, and your wife was there, by the way.
Yeah, Zareen was there. She was a 19-year-old volunteer on the campaign, and she was there on the floor that night that Reagan gave his awe-inspiring impromptu speech to the delegates and to the world. It was broadcast live by all three networks, and it really just it changed the arc of his career, and it changed the arc of American history. That's one speech right there.
Well, when he talked about the nuclear, basically Armageddon that would befall the country if we didn't do what we needed to do to stand up to the Soviets, the threat that existed, again, that won him all sorts of criticism from the media because they wanted, they liked détente, and they wanted to make sure we had. We kept détente, and it was going to be the continued get along with the Soviets. And Reagan believed that was foolish, and we saw that.
By talking about the letter, he begins the process of making the Republican Party the party of the future. And of course, by 1980, Jimmy Carter is and the Democrats are the party of the past. You know, the Democrats have been the party of the future from Happy Days Here Again, 1932, and Franklin Roosevelt, right up until 1976. The Republican Party had been the party of, green eye shade, eat your spinach, balanced budgets, and they had nothing compelling to tell the American people other than we can manage government better than the Democrats can. Reagan changes all that. He literally he appropriates Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1980 and runs as the candidate of the party of the future. And Carter is the candidate of the past. Carter is the candidate of malaise. Carter is the candidate of the descendant of Herbert Hoover, quite literally. And Reagan remakes the two parties in so doing.
Tell us about the relationship between the Fords and the Reagans.
It wasn't good. Here's two men who quite literally, they're both very, very friendly men, naturally friendly men, beyond just political friendly, who were just gregarious, nice guys, both Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan. But they couldn't stand each other. They could barely be in the same room with each other. And, of course, Mrs. Reagan and Betty Ford, it was even worse for them. But everything was at stake. And don't forget, too, is that Ford's campaign in 76 ran a lot of nasty personal slurred campaign ads against Governor Reagan, including calling him a warmonger, which really sent Reagan around the bend because nothing ticked him off more than being called a warmonger, other than being called a racist. So by the time they meet in Kansas City, neither side knows who's going to be the nominee. It's the first time since '52 when Republicans gather in Chicago not knowing if the nominee is going to be Dwight Eisenhower or Robert Taft. And so they gather in Kansas City there in 76, not knowing, because there were so many delegates who were at large and so many delegates who were up for stake. Of course, Ford prevails, but very, very narrowly, and thus you have a very divided convention. And because Ford is the incumbent, he controls a lot of the state parties, and so a lot of the delegates are mandated to vote for Gerald Ford, but their hearts really were with Ronald Reagan. You heard that in the audio of Kemper Arena that night. A writer the next day wrote that Ford won the nomination, but Reagan won their hearts, which was really, really true. The sentimental favorite really was Ronald Reagan.
When you look at those clips, and again, watch them again, and I urge people to do that as you're reading this book, you really feel it. The love for Reagan is palpable, not just the roar of the crowd, but I want to talk about another aspect of this. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. Craig Shirley, his new book, Reagan Rising. It's on our Facebook page on lauraingraham.com. Buy it at your local bookstore. Support your local bookstores, please. Also Amazon.com. Don't go away. 1970. Why couldn't it have been?
That gets to the nub of the book, doesn't it? His campaign slogan, he had several campaign slogans in 1980, of course, as we all know, Make America Great Again, which is now Donald Trump has made his slogan. But there was another one in 1980, which I really always liked, and that was, the time is now for Reagan, which encapsulates and suggests everything. Maybe the time wasn't for Reagan in 64, 68, or 76, but by 1980, the American people have caught up with his ideas, And there's a conservative enlightenment going on all across the country. Don't forget, Prop 13 happens in California. SALT II is turned away. The rejection of Jimmy Carter and big government is there's creative revolt all across the land. There's referendum. There's pro-family referendum. Heritage Foundation is created. So many conservative organizations come into full flower in the 70s. So by 1980, the ground is ready. The ground is hot and prepared. This is that the American people have swung away from government. They now reject the Great Society and the New Deal, and they re-embrace the tradition of American republic and the Declaration of Independence. So the American people have caught up to Ronald Reagan, so that although he may have not been ready, or the country may have not been ready for him in 76 completely, by 1980 they are.
One thing I was thinking about today as I was reading all the pieces about the Bush people and Democrats in the White House now, in the Trump administration, versus the conservative populists, it reminded me of the Bushes versus the Reagans all over again. I'm not saying Trump is Reagan. I'm not saying no one's Reagan, but that divide.
No, it's a well-taken point. It's a well-taken point. Is that politicians are always surrounded not just by friends, but by potential enemies. And in the Reagan White House, I mean, you were there, you saw it up close and personal. Is that there were a lot of people who were working actively against the Reagan agenda, who were trying to undermine the Reagan agenda through all those 8 years.
And they wanted to have the president's ear and determine domestic and foreign policy.
That's right.
And Donald Trump is facing that right now. It's the core of the man that's going to determine this. So Trump doesn't have decades of experience in debating these issues, and Ronald Reagan did. Craig Shirley, the book is phenomenal. Go out and get this book, Reagan Rising, The Decisive Years. So much to learn from the past.